Hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us again on Right at Home, the homeowner's inside guide to getting it done right the first time. I am joined once again by Ryan Johnson, the owner of Right Roofing here in Des Moines. How are we doing today, Ryan?
Doing great, Mike. How are you?
Doing great. So, this one's a good one today. So what we're going to be covering is whether is that a roof leak or a ventilation or moisture problem? So I guess my big question for you, Ryan, because this is kind of a big one, how can a homeowner tell whether they have an actual roof leak or an attic moisture ventilation issue?
Well, most homeowners are not going to take a peek in the attic.
Nope,
So
not happening.
you get a spot on your ceiling, and they're basically going to pretty much just call us right away. Um, how we would assess that um, is is we're going to kind of do an entire inspection on that roof. We might start from the top side of the roof. Make sure there's nothing obvious, no obvious flashing problems, any of that. And then we're just going to start asking a bunch of questions. So normally when we get into that going from winter into spring, and we get a lot of it heats up pretty quick. That's usually when we see a lot of ventilation problems that are going to kind of rear their ugly head. Um, so we're going to check the top side, and then we're also going to get up in that attic and see where it's coming from. Now, typically when people call us, and it's probably like February, March, maybe we get a little warm up, and they call us, and they always have a little brown spot in their bathroom. That's typically where it starts.
So that again, you're doing a great job of kind of reading my mind here. So does that brown spot you were just talking about, if that's on your ceiling, does that always, does that always mean you have a roof leak?
No, it does not.
Walk us through a few case scenarios of what that brown spot could mean besides a roof leak.
So a lot of times it's going to be a bathroom exhaust fan that's not vented outside properly. So years ago, they used to just take this cheap plastic tubing and they just kind of attach it to the fan and lay it wherever they wanted to in the attic. So what it needs to be is it needs to be an insulated tube because it's hot, moist air going out, and that
Yep.
needs to go to a proper application into the roofing system that vents that thing out. So plus it's always good to leave, sometimes we're asking the customers questions like, do you leave the bath exhaust fan on after you take a shower? So typically I tell people, leave that thing on while you're brushing your teeth after you get out of the shower. Leave it on for 10, 15 minutes. They used to have timers on those things back in the 70s. You'd see a lot of timer.
I'm old enough to remember that.
Yep. So they leave a timer on it, and you just set the timer on it. It'd run for 15 to 20 minutes, and then it dries that tube out going out. That a lot of times back then they didn't vent it out through the roof. But a lot of times just that alone would allow it to dry out. But after a long winter of doing that, not leaving that bathroom fan on because it's noisy, right? People are like, oh, it's noisy. I just kind of want to get rid of the noise. It just, all that moisture just starts collecting in that tube that it goes to, the little flexible tubing, and it just starts to sit there and collect there. So a lot of attics that we've been in, we'll get up there and we'll basically take a bucket with us and then drain that tube out into the bucket because it's a winter's worth of moisture sitting in that, and it'll fill up a half gallon or so of water that's sitting in there. So
Wow. Okay, I wouldn't expect that.
yeah.
So how can attic condensation create damage that looks exactly like a roof leak, since we're kind of up there in that attic space?
Yeah, so it's always going to just turn into a brown spot on your ceiling, right? It's going to take
Okay.
whatever dirt and debris that it has with it, and over time, it's going to soak through your insulation, and then it's going to show up like a brown spot on your ceiling. For a homeowner, it's hard for them to be able to tell without having the proper diagnosis on it, whether that's actual is it an actual roof leak or is it a condensation thing? They'd actually have to kind of know what they're looking for. A lot of times people get that show up and it hasn't snowed or rained for 2-3 weeks. That would probably be your first indicator, is like, it hasn't rained, but I got a brown spot on my ceiling. Then it's going to
Yep.
point more to a ventilation issue.
No, that makes complete sense. So, so since we're talking about all this ventilation and attic, what does proper attic ventilation look like, and why is it so important?
Yeah, it's pretty critical. So at Right Roofing, we inspect every single attic space that we run into. We're looking at that whole ventilation system. So we're looking at the intake, which is the little vents under your soffit. Sometimes those just get clogged over time. Maybe your
Yep.
roof ventilation might be okay, but it's your soffit intake ventilation that's not properly intaking air into that space. And then we'll look at that roof ventilation. A lot of times we see this a ton. A lot of hip style houses, so low sloped, and they got hip because it's kind of a newer style in this last 10 years that people are kind of attracted to. And then they'll put on about ridge vent that's about 4 foot of ridge vent, and that's all that's venting out your attic space. Well, the reason they do that is because, well, there's only so much ridge on that. There's only so much to put that, but they're told by the manufacturer that, oh, ridge vent's the best, put this on, you should be fine no matter what, but it's not letting out enough exhaust out of that attic space. So you got to add it. And a lot of times you have to do an active ventilation at that point, just because of the room involved. So you got to kind of know all the parts and pieces that you can use in the different scenarios. And that's what we try to do for our customers.
Perfect. So, I mean, I'm assuming that you guys can even help people change out their like bathroom fans and ceiling fan. I mean, all that, the ventilation fans. You can do that as well as the roof. I think that's important for people to know, because let's just say you have a improperly installed ventilation fan in your bathroom. You can help with that as well, I assume.
Yeah, like not the actual fan itself, but the application from the fan through that roofing
Perfect.
system. Yeah.
Perfect.
So that would be an electrician that's typically
Yep.
going to replace that fan for people. But once that fan is in there working properly, then we just take it with an insulated tube and we take that out through the roofing system. So all that hot, moist air goes where we want it to, which is to the outside.
Perfect.
So
I love that answer. So, why are roof leaks more commonly misdiagnosed during Iowa's winter to spring cycle, like right now?
um, I think it's just at Right Roofing, we always diagnose the actual cause before we recommend any work. So it gets misdiagnosed a lot because I just think that a lot of people don't understand. They're worried about putting on that roof and they're not thinking about all the other components that it ties into. That's that's what 29 years of experience gives you, is that we're looking at how all that stuff works together.
You bet. And speaking of everything working together, and I know you kind of went over this a little bit, but let's go just a little bit more in detail on, because what I wanted to ask you is, how do improperly vented bathroom fans contribute to attic moisture problems? How does what happens? I mean, kind of break that down just a little bit more for us so that people understand that, if you could.
Yeah, so you get just so it's basically pulling all that moisture away from your bathroom, right? So it's getting out of the bathroom, but is it getting out of that attic space? So you got a cold roof decking, you got a cold attic space. So as soon as that hot, moist air hits that cold air, it's going to condense, right? So it's going to a lot of times going to hit anything that's metal up in your attic. Most of it's wood, but the nails that poke through the roof decking, a lot of times we'll see when we get up there and it's cold, we'll see frost, right? It'll just form a frost just like we get every single morning here during the winter. And
Yep.
it's going to do that on the underside of that roof decking. And if it stays cold for a long time, it's just going to keep collecting. It's going to keep collecting every day you're taking a shower. It's adding more moisture to those areas, and it keeps freezing, and it just builds up just like you'd see an icicle build up. And then what happens as soon as it starts to warm up, it all melts. And then where does it come? Ugly brown spots on our ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been there. I mean, my house is 26 years old, so yeah, led me to, getting all that stuff checked out. So I do realize the importance of that. So what should homeowners check before just assuming they need a roof repair or replacement?
Well, a lot of times they're not going to have. If I was a homeowner, I'd probably pop my head up in the attic. Most people aren't going to do that,
Right. I'm not.
So it's just a full inspection. That's what we do here at Right Roofing. We're always looking for that actual cause of the problem. So it's just going to take an overall check the top side of the roof, make sure our flashings and everything are installed properly, that there's no deterioration in those areas. And as soon as we figure out that all that stuff looks good, that's when we're going to go ahead and get into that attic space, make sure that those bath fans are vented out right, and make sure that that ventilation is working properly for you. And that's going to prevent any of those issues from happening to you.
Perfect. So how does Right Roofing determine the true source of a leak before recommending repairs or replacement? Kind of go through that process with me a little bit.
It's really just going to be another full inspection, and it's going to be asking you as the homeowner, a bunch of questions, right? When does this come up as a problem? Does it come up all the time? Did it happen after it rains? Do you only see it at certain times of the year? So it's just a lot of questions. It's a lot of consultative approach. So we got to figure out what's going on with the home first, and it's going to take a pretty much a full exterior inspection of that roofing system, make sure everything is right there, and then making sure that your proper intake, you get proper exhaust. It's going to take a little bit of crawling around in that attic space with flashlights. Usually, hopefully in the spring when it's not as hot, gets pretty hot up there during the summertime. But usually those issues are kind of happening in the winter and in the spring. So, which makes it easier for us.
So when you do come out and do that, I'm assuming that this one, I think you're going to understand this question. I'm sure you've seen this before with all your years of experience. When you ask all those questions and you kind of do a deep dive, don't be embarrassed. Kind of like when you go to the doctor, answer the questions, answer them honestly, and just realize that you didn't build the home. It's not your fault. You didn't neglect it. It's just the aftermath of somebody else's work. Am I right? Because I would say a lot of people are going to be embarrassed by it and think they did something wrong.
Yeah, usually when they're calling us, they're beyond the embarrassment part and they're just wanting to get that thing figured out. So, yeah, definitely just be honest with us. Let us know what's going on. And a lot of people don't even realize, like usually one of the first questions I ask if somebody's getting a new roof, I'm like, have you had any active leaks? And a lot of times they'll just kind of say no, because they don't even understand what an active leak is.
Right.
And then I walk in their house and I start looking up, because you never look up, and I start seeing brown spots all over the place, and I'm like, well, this is an active leak.
Are you sure?
This is what's going on.
Yeah, like I said, that honesty factors, it's a big thing. And I understand the embarrassment part of like, oh, I probably should have called you earlier or whatever, but I think that from talking to you, you'd make somebody feel comfortable. Go, don't worry about it. Let's just get it fixed. Call it a day.
Yep. It's kind of part of home ownership, right? There's always something.
You just got to remember, don't be embarrassed you didn't build the house.
That's right.
So, um, so we got a lot of information about leaks and everything. So we'll kind of wind this up. Kind of the big question that I have for you today, Ryan, is how can a misdiagnosed roof leak end up costing homeowners thousands of dollars in unnecessary work? So it's kind of how we'll wind it up and just kind of go through the scenarios, the different case scenarios that if you just let it go and ignore it, how can that cost you thousands of dollars?
Yeah, so letting it go and ignoring it is definitely not something that people want to do. You definitely want to stay on top of that. You get drywall damage, you get more roof decking damage. It can cause problems. You can get mold in your attic space. Um, it can just start to add up really quickly, not staying on top of that. Um, we've seen also where just neglecting maintenance can be an issue. Um, pipe flashings are probably one of the most common leaks. They happen. The rubber gaskets, depending on your flashing style that you used, are going to wear out in between that 10 to 15-year range. And people automatically think that, oh, I need to replace my roof, because I've got a leak. Well, you just need to replace a flashing. You got a few $100s in replacing a flashing compared to a $18,000 roof. Well,
Right.
I got 3 leaks all over. Well, you got 3 vent pipe flashings that all need a little bit of attention. So instead of spending 15 to $20,000, now you're spending 5 to $800 to replace some pipe flashings, and now you can get another 10 years out of your roofing system. So there's a lot that kind of goes into it. It is very simple when you know what you're looking for. That's why we just recommend calling Right Roofing here in Des Moines, and we can help you out. We always use the consultative approach to see what's going to be in the best interest of our customers.
That's perfect. That should give homeowners enough peace of mind just to be able to call you guys right out the chute. So, again, very informative episode. You get those brown spots, just give these guys a call. I know that you guys will always do the right thing for the homeowner. You look out for the best interest of the homeowner, not the best interest of your company, which I truly appreciate. That's what's kept you guys in business for so long and makes you one of the best here in Des Moines. So
Can I uh,
I,
can I tell you a little story here?
I would love to hear a little story.
Okay, I know we're kind of running a little bit long
No, we're
here.
not. No, we're not. We're good to go.
Okay. So we've started to do our roof inspections after we've done roofs for like about 5 years in, 10 years in. We want to do that inspection for you because what we're doing is actually holding that manufacturer accountable. So we've had quite a few roofs here since we've been around so long. Some of these roofs that are going on, I've seen anywhere from 12 to 18 years, and we come back and we inspect those roofs. Well, we've actually been finding some manufacturer issues. And every roof that we do, we get a warranty from the manufacturer on that roofing system. If that's registered properly, which we always do, we've actually saved our customers tons of money. Like I think we've had about 2 or 3 of them here in the last 6 months. Well, we registered probably what cost about $100 to $150, and they're actually getting their roof replaced from the manufacturer
Wow.
just by keeping up on those inspections. So instead of hiring the guys that are here one day and gone the next, that's a huge benefit to our customers because that new roof, I think one of them was about a $28,000 roof. And so instead of having $28,000 out of that customer's pocket after about 17 years of having that roofing system on, we were able to go, and he was just wanting a new roof just because it was starting to get a little algae on it. The system was starting to perform, but he's like, roofs get replaced at 18 years. Because we registered at that time, it was about an $80 warranty. They're actually getting, it didn't cover everything because there's a few things the manufacturer wouldn't cover, but I think he had about $1,500 out of his pocket instead of $28,000 because we registered that warranty for him.
That's amazing. That's amazing. See, this is why you call. This is why you call these guys. They're gonna save you a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of heartache, and just be upfront and honest with you. So thanks again, Ryan. I appreciate it. And thanks for joining us on Right at Home, the homeowner's inside guide to getting it done right the first time. Thanks a lot, Ryan. And I look forward to our next talk.
Thanks, Mike.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.